But the moment a soldier enters the US military, how effective it would be from basic training to right away begin developing these regulation skills for recovery. Keeps the prefrontal cortex thick and active. What we also know is when people are under stress, the ATP is sucked out of the prefrontal by the amygdala. So what that does is it dampens people's decision making and it creates reactivity. One thing that I'm very passionate about with the military is a lot of these mental health issues and a lot of these problems that I've witnessed, it's that people are so reactive because their neurobiology is exhausted.
The military is changing. They're realizing that people just can't sustain, with the amount of pressure, the amount of trauma, the amount of stress, and really understanding that there is a mind-body connection. And I think people are realizing this more and more. I never thought that I've been in for 23 years. I never thought the military would ever get to where they are right now, which they still have a ways to go. But the fact that that door is even open for the military is amazing to me. I actually incorporate it with my students on a quarterly basis. I've been trying for a monthly basis. They really are appreciative of it, and I feel like the younger generation is really embracing this mind-body connection.
One of the greatest gifts about data and understanding metrics is it forces us to get creative to solve them. And what we're witnessing in real time, whether it's our military or law enforcement or these other arenas, addressing mental hygiene, stress response, physical hygiene and health, vitality, spiritual hygiene, meaning all of these things are now becoming deeper factors in the impact and potency of the professional, of the personnel. So we're seeing this in live action, that there's regulations and things changing, because naturally this is what happens when things get really bad, then it can only go up from here. So we're seeing a lot of changes, and it's a really exciting time to witness the culture of the military transforming to be truly soldier-centered, nourishing the families and finding new solutions that are going to be sustainable.
We are so results-driven as a society now that if we, going back to the military community, I watched as they started to implement holistic health and fitness. And I was a part of that for my brigade as the senior NCO, kind of that connection between the H2F team and the command team. And I watched that people just want to be recognized as people. And they want to know that people care. The productivity level, the resiliency level only increased when they knew that they had those tools, when they started practicing those tools, implementing those tools, and knowing that people, others around them, cared about their well-being. It spreads like wildfire. And I think taking it outside of the military community and expanding it to the civilian community or wherever you find yourself, it's only going to spread and grow because it's a positive and it makes a difference. It's that little ripple, right? That it may take a really, really long time for that ripple in the middle of the water to get to the shore, but once it does, like, you see how big it's grown and how big it's gotten, and the impact is still there from however far it traveled.
Yoga helps give you the skills to help self-regulate. I guess that's, everybody talks about self-regulation, and I guess the best example would be, like, I recently had a really negative experience with a doctor. You know, I was having a rough day. I am a veteran. I do have post-traumatic stress disorder. I do suffer with anxiety, and going to the doctor causes a lot of anxiety.
I'm sure, yeah.
And I was in there, and it was a new doctor. Not my normal PCM. And my heart rate's elevated. Like, I have very low blood pressure, so when I'm hitting the upper 140s, I'm seeing spots.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hyperventilating, I'm beet red, I'm sweating, I can't breathe, my pulse is out of control. You know, and she comes in, and I swore a couple times. I guess I know everybody doesn't like swearing, but when you're actively trying to, and I'm just like, I'm effing tired, doc. Like, I've got this and this going on, and then she proceeded to just berate me about swearing, and I'm like, you're a doctor in a military treatment facility. You know, I'm a veteran, and I'm sorry, but I'm actively in distress. And had it been my regular doctor and any of the nurses, they would have immediately known, like, oh, she's not okay right now. But it wasn't. And I could feel the situation escalating, and I'm getting angrier, and I'm getting more worked up, and I'm like, I want to burst, like, you're not listening to me. And then I'm like, no, like, be present in the moment. So, you know, I started breathing through my nose and out through my mouth, and taking 5 minutes, and I'm breathing, and I'm thinking about, like, meditations, and then I just sat back for a minute and kind of breathed myself down, and I was able to talk to her. And as I'm leaving, it dawned on me, I was like, this is why so many veterans, and it happens for us all the time, they have these really negative interactions, they get kicked out of facilities, or, oh, you're this and that, and it's like, everybody talks about self-regulation and mindfulness, but the biggest thing, I think, in the veteran community, they're like, oh, try this or do that, and it's like, you can do yoga all day, it's a physical practice, it is, but you have to tie some mindfulness into that. And I would like to take my yoga practice in a direction where I can help veterans self-regulate with yoga and mindfulness and meditation, because it's easy to say that all day, but unless somebody has been taught tangible skills, like with the brain gym, doing this, and, you know, like, because I sat there like this in the chair, and I'm talking to the doctor, and I'm breathing, and I'm regulating through it.
I mean, that's how, like, we have a direct relationship with our nervous system, and you're truly a testament. I love it. Oh,
yeah,
I think
that's
so
I think
good.
the most impactful, and that's where I'm gonna take it.
Like, my experience with the military, it was very regimented, it wasn't very supportive of all, you know. It's like, they didn't really care about your family or your spouse, because, you know, the Army didn't issue you a spouse. Or you'd go through, like, some severely traumatic events, like things that are life-changing, not just on the battlefield, but off the battlefield. You know, I was a nurse, and we used to accept the soldiers coming in from Iraq and Afghanistan at launch school. Like, we were the first stop. They'd come in, and, you know, after being at the trauma centers, you know, downrange, they'd come in, and we would be the first people that they would see. And, you know, that does take a toll on somebody. Also, you know, with war, there's a lot of families that, you know, are separated from their spouse. So there's a lot of transformational change when your spouse goes off to downrange to Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever. You know, here at the family, it's like, you know, you're basically left to your own devices, or, you know, they develop, you know, a big sense. Some others don't fare so well, and there's a lot of tragedy that happens there that the people here to support those families have to witness, and that causes a lot of trauma. Without being able to decompress, without being able to process that trauma. And it leaves you, when you're out of the military, without your support, without your big job, without, you know, all this stuff, with just this jumble of pain and of trauma and of hurt and confusion. And it's somatic. You feel it in your body.
Yeah. It's like when they're downrange and there's a lot of chaos going on at home, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Right.
It, you know, that decreases the potency of what they can deliver downrange and being focused. But on the flip side, it's like when like both sides of it really matter, and that's what I see these changes, because like you said, it was a lot worse, and because we learn from our past, right? We can't hold ourselves hostage for what we didn't know in the past, but we can learn and digest that to make a better generation of soldiers for the future and families for the future. And I think that, because over the years with the work that I've done, the concept of, well, we don't want to be soft, it's frustrating because soft things don't shatter, and there's a difference between being soft and weak versus being malleable and adaptive. That you can sit here and go, okay, how do we adapt it to this individual, or how can we be strategic in human performance beyond burning you out till there's nothing left in you, but let's actually work with the whole holistic perspective of your nervous system and improve recovery skills while enhancing performance. You know, there's so much at the table that can be done, and I think we're at an early time, because even 10 years ago, like Ranger Battalion and different places like that, they were bringing more of the meditation, mindfulness, breath work and things into those arenas, but now it's beginning to pour out into the whole military, and it's just about changing the perspective that yes, yoga, this is yoga, but we can take the skills and concepts of yoga and turn it into this tactical mobility regulation intervention that we utilize in PT, that we utilize with soldiers who are struggling. And just there's so many ways to trickle in the mind-body competencies or mindfulness tools throughout the military itself as an organization.
The biggest thing that I'm seeing is acceptance of it, really. Like I said, you know, the military, when I joined, was very stoic one. You showed no emotions, you showed no weakness, and realizing that, you know, being mindful and being self-aware is not a weakness. If anything, your vulnerabilities are what sets you apart and how you grow. And I think self-regulation, you know, as a culture, not just in the military, has, I don't want to say shifted, but I feel like people are accepting the fact that, wait, I can do this on my own. I don't need the pills. I don't need X, Y, and Z. Like, this is all within me. I think that's such a big shift. And I think, you know, the military is seeing that, and the society as a whole, I think we're all opening our eyes to this self-regulation.
Joined the Navy when I was starting medical school. And at that point, you know, I did my training with the Navy after medical school, and I was in an operational unit. At that time, I was practicing yoga regularly, and I was able to bring yoga, basically teaching to my fellow corpsmen and sailors yoga lessons, and everybody benefited from it, and I wanted more of it. So that made me more motivated to pursue yoga education for myself and for my fellow sailors and corpsmen, and then as well as for my patients for the future. More and more they were requesting yoga because they felt the benefits, both physical and of course like the mental aspects of it as well.
Yoga is not just happening, it doesn't just happen on your mat. Yoga is everything. Yoga is sitting in this chair and breathing. Yoga is when you're driving down the street and some car almost hits you out of nowhere. Being able to regulate your breath and just find peace amidst the chaos of life. It's a practice that you live. I went through Combatives Level 1 and Combatives Level 2 training. I both got certified in both of them. And it's funny because at the beginning of both of those, every time they do like the stretching stuff, like, oh guys, we're doing yoga. And they would like do the air quotes and then make fun, but we did it before every single class. So I still have a lot of PTSD from the military and from when I was deployed. And I mean, I've had 3 kids and countless medical things. And it just, when you're going through the really hard times is when you need like to be able to connect to yourself the most. And I feel like that's when we disconnect. Because we don't want to feel it. If we don't feel it, then maybe it'll get better. But having that awareness and the mindfulness to connect, sit in, live through, gets you to the other side faster. With Gladiator program, we saw the most impact on getting soldiers to return back to duty. So instead of them being recycled out or kicked out because of injury, rehabilitation was improved. These kids don't have a lot of bone density like the generations before. So they're very susceptible to lower limb injury in basic training. So yoga is a huge way to combat that, build bone density.
Funny that, and I've heard this is true, like they're actually, like it was rare that you would have like so you go into basic training and they would put you like in a beginner battalion or like, you know, pre-basic training if you didn't measure up. And there was usually like, you know, maybe 10 soldiers per battalion that would have to go into this. And now they're finding that they actually have to create an entire new program to get these young soldiers up to speed to what I guess we were back like in the 90s.
Literally lifestyle, like a lot of with the military, it's your lifestyle before that has a big impact on like how well you do physically for sure. And also it's just a different mindset. And you know, right now I support projects, I'm a mentor, I advise when needed. You know, I spent 3.5 years, heavy involvement. But a lot of that though, I will say a lot of it's volunteerism to pioneer this, because to even just have someone to innovate and work with the drill sergeants or to test out these different things, it's hard to find that. And if someone's watching this, I encourage, like, if you are on a military base or in local areas and if you want to see change, sometimes we just got to step up and give a little bit of our time and see what can happen. Maybe there'll be a job after for you, maybe not, but it's like there's no funding there because they just don't know. Now we know, and look at what's happening in the military. It's so exciting.
2010, my husband Steve Salazar was commanding in Germany. He had just taken command and found out literally the day before one of his soldiers had committed suicide. So he started looking for a solution. Like he thought, this doesn't make any sense, and why are we not focused on this? And so he found Dr. Lopez, and she had created a course for soldiers that were returning from combat and then redeploying. In that program, the initial inclusion was yoga. So yoga, meditation, mindfulness, relaxation. Everything she implemented was scientifically based. So she didn't implement anything that just was like, pull it from thin air. She actually did the research to find out what was actually working. What's great about their story though is she said that he was the first commander that she pitched the program to that actually got it. She said that she could see the moment that it clicked, and he thought, "Oh, we need to bring this to our military." Together, he implemented it, and just talking to commands and explaining as a general and as a retired general from his own experience, explaining why this was important to him.
My name is Christy McGraw, and I'm a facilitator for the 360 Leadership Course. I'm also a physical therapist on the team. I'm an Army veteran, and I'm married to a former Marine. I think there's much more awareness of the leader as a person, and not just as a cog in a system. And so I think there's a move towards health and wellness, and not just a 1-hour PT session in the morning. It's kind of an overall move toward whole being health.
So having a regulated nervous system offers an ability that whether we are leaning into weapons qualification, right, working with firearms, if we're super hyper aroused while we're training, and we want to be under pressure and under arousal, but stay regulated, stay coherent, and train experiences like that. But what happens is a lot of these environments, it just says, hey, stay regulated, stay coherent. I'm gonna put you under pressure so you can deal with it. But what happens if we give mindfulness skills and mindfulness tools to prepare the individuals so they know what to do when they're under that pressure? And yoga does what yoga does for all people, whether they're in the military or in other arenas. Yoga is going to train us to build new neural patterns that maintain that coherence in times of pressure and tension. We can train and prepare our nervous system for these things, and it can happen on the mat, and it can happen through small choices you make in your life.
I found my yoga teacher training in the middle of my husband's struggle with PTSD, and not just his struggle, but my struggle to help him through that. Be a partner that could understand and relate and help him without really knowing what was going on inside of him. But being able to just really take this suffering that he had and try and help him, even if it was just a little bit, it made a difference. And so for me, that is why I'm doing it. That's why I continue to do it. It's come from all different kind of things, like just something as simple as helping him feel more grounded. And for me, I feel like the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so as I've gone through this, I'm teaching him stuff. It's reinforcing that to me, and it's helping me sink more into self-discovery than I initially expected to, I guess, when I started the process and the journey.
We think that leadership is up there, and what I would love for people to understand and know is leadership is here, and we get to create leadership. We don't have to wait for somebody else to do it for you. You don't have to wait for approval. Steve is a perfect example of that to me, Steve and Mary both, because Steve and he had to brush up against some, he got a lot of pushback for having implemented the course. Believe in yourself, believe in your ability to be that leader that can make that change. We all get to change the culture, every single one of us.
As being in the Army, we sometimes think they need to change it. My higher up, my superior, we're calling them they. If they would do a different job, if the Army would do something different. And we need to realize that as a leader, we're somebody's they. And so we can be an effective change. And in doing that, we can have a ripple effect, and the Army can change.
I think something that they can do, or something that people can do, is kind of stress the benefits, not just for the individual soldier, but for the organization at large, and after the service. The amount of money that we're spending, in the Veterans Administration for mental health care, for a lot of these preventable or injuries that, you have just from ruck marching, right?
Yeah.
All these things, could be saved. All this money could be saved for future generations.
Correct.
You'll have better retirees, better veterans, a lot less anger and stress.
And the mental, and when you think about the soldier athlete, right? That's their big thing, or at least in the Army. It's how we cultivate and develop a soldier athlete. Well, what are actual professional athletes doing? They're doing yoga. They're doing a lot of recovery stuff, meditation, mindfulness. If you look at top athletes and their regimens, recovery is a non-negotiable.